show for Mr. Ed Bennett and his reasoning for wanting to be a regent at Del Mar College. He's an at-large candidate, and want to make sure that you people understand the verbiage that we've got. Now, I'm a chemist, microbiologist. I'm not an accountant. And this man is a CPA. He's got master's degrees in accounting and so forth and so on. So I'd like to ask him about, to explain two items to us. One is the general ledger, and the other one is the chart of accounts. So if you would please, Ed, inform us as to what you're asking for with the general ledger.
Thanks, Doctor. Let me go over just the basic concept of the chart of accounts. That is all the accounts, the assets. Assets are things you own. Liabilities, people you owe money to would be a liability. Like if you have a car note, a house note, those are liabilities. Equity is your net worth. That's the assets minus the liabilities. Then we get into the revenue, which is, for a college, that's all the money that they earn. Tuition, ad valorem taxes. If they do contract work for Kingsville, Texas A&M Kingsville, that would be revenue. And then you subtract the expenses, which would be professor salaries, interest expense. All the expenses would be categorized under expenses. So you have those different categories, and the chart of accounts lists each of those accounts, and there's a lot of them in a college. They have to account for each cost center. Your department would be a cost center.
Okay.
The lawn maintenance would be a cost center.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge chart of accounts, and that makes up the foundation for a general ledger. So the general ledger records all the transactions that go through the college books. Now, the transactions would be all the receipts coming in individually. Each one would be coded to a separate account, whichever account they should be posted to, and all the expenses going out, which would be all the checks written.
Okay.
And then they will have some accruals, and an example of an accrual would be the bad debt allowance. Every month they're going to make a certain allowance for bad debt expense. So that's posted through a journal entry. So it gets a little complicated if you're not familiar with it, but it's very, very basic after your first 1 or 2 accounting courses.
Okay.
And it's not hard to understand because it's been the foundation of business. The language of business is accounting. It's been the same for centuries, and it just hasn't changed. It's gotten computerized.
Okay.
So it's something that all business people understand.
Okay. Well, I'm a non-business person. Okay, and then that leads into the general ledger that you asked for, and it's my understanding that you had asked for both the chart of accounts and the ledger on several occasions, and were told that you had received those, and I don't think that was quite the way it went.
It's interesting. When we started doing this, and you started teaching me how to do Public Information Act request over a year ago, and I said, well, this is very interesting. There's a lot of information here that we don't know. So let me get 1 month of the general ledger detail so that I'll understand what's going through the general ledger on a monthly basis. But I need a chart of accounts to know all the accounts and the definitions. So I sent a PIA request in, and this is standard reporting. There should be 1, 2, or 3 buttons that you push on a mouse and get this report.
Right.
So I get a response from the college PIA officer, and she says, your information's ready. We go in there together,
Mm-hmm.
and I sit down and I said, Doctor, this is not what I asked for.
Right.
And so, but I went through, they provided a summary general ledger, not a detailed general ledger.
Okay.
I wanted the detail that has all the transactions. The summary has each account, like, let's say, cash and bank.
Okay.
And it'll have total debits, total credits. And that's it.
Okay.
I wanted all the checks that were posted.
Mm-hmm.
So what they gave me, what I wanted was 4,000 pages, and PDF is fine.
Right.
But they should have it sitting there anyway.
Right.
What they gave me was a little stack, I said, that's not the detail, that's the summary. Nobody can mistake that if they know what an accounting system is.
Okay.
Nobody can make that mistake. And there was no chart of accounts. And that's a small document, but it didn't exist.
Okay. Well, I'm still a little confused as to what the general ledger is. Can you tell me?
The general ledger, everything, that's the books and records of the company, or in this case of the college.
Right.
Every transaction that goes through the college has to be kept on the books and records, and the general ledger is the books and records of the college.
Right.
So every transaction, if they buy a 50-cent postage stamp, it's in that general ledger.
Okay.
So, and if we think of Enron, they had off-balance sheet transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the balance sheet is a component of the general ledger, and we don't have any off-balance sheet transactions. They all, well, we don't think we have them.
Right.
They all go through the general ledger. So it's every transaction the college has entered into for whatever period of time.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. If we've been told that we need an internal auditor at Del Mar College, and they've got a sign up that says his office is this way. To your knowledge, is there an internal auditor at Del Mar College?
Hasn't been one since I've been going to board meetings, and that's over a year now.
Okay.
And in fact, I looked for the last one, and I found references to an internal auditor, and an announcement that the internal auditor had been hired, but then all of a sudden, there's no internal auditor.
Okay. Well, do you feel that at a $80 million a year enterprise, taxpayers' money, at Del Mar College, now the tuition is included in that. We've got district funds that go into, taxpayer funds that go into the Del Mar College district. We've got state funds that go in there, and then we've got federal. Do you think that we're skating on thin ice by not having an internal auditor, and maybe a person without an accounting degree of any sort, no accounting courses that we can tell as the CFO at Del Mar College? Is that a detriment? Is that a potential disaster?
Let me tell you my thoughts on that, and my thoughts remain the same after the discoveries that we've made as they were before. But my thoughts initially were, we're looking at approximately an $80 million a year operating budget. You break that down on a daily basis, that's $300,000 a day. Now, any business with that kind of revenue and expenses going through, any business is going to have an internal control system with checks and balances. That's what an internal control system is. It's checks and balances. Part of an internal control system would be qualified people in key positions. And by qualified people if you're spending $300,000 a day, a qualified person will have 3 initials after his name.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what those other initials are, they're going to be CPA after it.
Right.
And Del Mar, to the best of my knowledge, has none of those, and certainly not in a key position.
Right.
So that's a weakness in the internal control system, in my belief.
Right.
In my experience, if you don't have somebody that's passed the CPA exam and you're running $300,000 a day through the business, in this case the college, there's a weakness.
Right.
Now, there are compensating controls. When you have a weakness, you can compensate for it with another control, another check and balance. And in this case, that may be an internal auditor. But even if the college had 3 CPAs in there, I contend they still should have at least 1 internal auditor, and based on the findings that we've discovered, more than 1.
Right.
And I'm not talking about a guy that just graduated from college that became an auditor. I'm talking about somebody that makes some serious money, that's been around and knows what he's doing.
Right.
We have found things that are very upsetting, and based on my experience, there needs to be an internal auditor in there going through this stuff on a daily basis that knows what he's looking for.
Right.
Um,
Well, you know, it's disturbing to me as a taxpayer, ladies and gentlemen, that we have $80 million of taxpayers' money at different levels. You know, like I say, it's district, state, federal, and everything else, and it's just doesn't seem to add up that we don't have someone in there that knows what's going on. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bennett. It's a pretty pointed question. As a taxpayer in the district and a community member and so forth and so on, then what is your interest in running for Del Mar College Board? Is it to straighten this out for the general public? I mean, I know you're a very benevolent person, and it's going to cost you money to run for that board. But what is your general feeling about what's going on at Del Mar?
Not only is it going to cost me money to run for the board, it already has. It's going to, if I win the election, I'm going to exercise the fiduciary responsibility that that office requires.
Right.
You're not made a board member without the obligations that go with it. And one of the obligations is fiduciary responsibility. That board is responsible for that $300,000 a day passing through there. And let me show you or tell you what prompted me, other than our work over there, to say that there's something wrong. Somebody needs to look at it. I'm looking at the tax rates, and we looked at this a year ago. We started looking at the budget. I said, why is our tax rate at Del Mar over 24 cents per 100? Why is it? How does that compare to the other colleges, the other community colleges in the state? Well, it's the second highest.
Right.
Now that bothered me. Second highest, and by a big margin. El Paso, they're at about 11 cents. We're more than twice them. Amarillo, 16 cents. We're third higher than that. So why is it costing us so much? Well, then I went to the internet and I said, how do we compare the cost to get a student through Del Mar? How does that compare to other places?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2008, it cost over $13,600 per student. 2009, $12,700. 2012, the most recent data that's on the internet, $12,368. Well, okay, what's the average in America? 2013 average, $9,089.
Well,
We're over a third higher in expenses to get a student through Del Mar. Now that bothers me.
oh yeah,
All right,
bothers me too.
You have to look at averages and compare your cost to others. And that's what I've been doing. I've been spending a great deal of time doing that. All community colleges publish their financials, and they're huge. I've been going on their websites and downloading the PDFs. I said, okay, these numbers are not in line. Let's see what else is not in line. Initially, they wanted the Board of Regents wanted to float a $287 million bond issue. And I knew we already had approximately $100 million out. And to me, $100 million is a lot of debt.
Oh yeah.
But if you add $287 million to it, it's a whole lot of debt. Now they subsequently reduced that to only $157 million,
Right.
which will make over $250 million outstanding. So I said, let me research that. Does that make sense? And what I did, I said, how much per student debt are we carrying?
Right.
So I went to the internet. Right now, as of 2012 on the internet, the Del Mar debt is $9,890 per student.
Okay.
So I compared that to other colleges. And some you'll recognize, like Wharton.
Mhm.
If you drive back and forth to Houston, you go through Wharton.
Right.
And that college has been around for a while. It's grown. It seems to be doing very well.
I had, actually, Ed, I had relatives out of Bay City that went to that school years and years ago.
It's been around a long time. It's
Oh, yeah.
always had a good reputation. They have $612 per student in debt.
Mm.
Now that's comparing to, if this bond issue goes through, we'll have $23,091 per student.
Whoa.
We would be so far, that would be on Mars if we did a graph.
Right.
And right now, Del Mar's $9,890 compared to Wharton's $612.
Yeah.
15 times as much?
Right. Now, your information is not contrived here locally. You went into what, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to find most of that information?
A lot of it comes from Bill and Melinda Gates. They have a website, or they support a website that has a wealth of information. I also went to the Texas Association of Community Colleges. There's another website called Tell the Truth Texas. And they've got just a wealth of information. And it's as reliable as I can get because, as we know, I'm not able to get much from Del Mar.
Join my club.
And let's talk about that a little bit. But well, first, let me finish this. I looked at these numbers, and I'm not a financial analyst, but I've got a pretty solid background in accounting. I had 18 accounting courses. That's not 18 hours, that's 18 courses. That's 54 semester hours. I went to work for a Big 8 accounting firm for over 3 years. There's only 4 left now, but they only hire the top 10% of the graduates.
Right.
So I've got some good, solid accounting experience. I've been doing it a long time. I look at these numbers, they don't make any sense to me. They're completely out of line, and it's not 1 or 2 of them. It's every number I look at is completely out of line.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, what's wrong? And then I look at the bios of the Board of Regents members, and I notice the only one with a finance background appears to be Trey McCampbell.
Right.
The others, they've done well in their field, but their field doesn't involve finance.
No.
So my question is, who's watching the $300,000 a day? Then we get into administration, and Dr. Escamilla's got some kind of PhD from University of Texas for community college administration,
Right.
which probably has an accounting course or 2 in it. And we drop down to the CFO, who would be normally the man in charge of the $300,000 a day, and I don't find any accounting courses in his background.
No.
None.
Well, that's the peril in it, I'll say. Not crime, but it's a peril. And I just can't believe that what we've uncovered with this, is so extensive. And, all I did was, when you and I attended that workshop where Dr. Sloan had indicated that, he was doing everything he could to collect all these bad debts and so forth and so on. And I decided to go ahead and ask for that information, and, it's just snowballed from there.
Well,
I'm just...
and let me tell you, I need to explain to the people watching, you filed a PIA request, and it took a little while for them to gather it, because there was 5 feet of paper there.
Oh, yeah.
5 feet.
Right.
And included in that paper were 3 very revealing documents.
Mhm.
Now, I suspect they didn't think we'd find those 3
It was-
very revealing documents.
It's like a needle in the haystack, folks, and we did it. So,
Well, we found that needle, and after getting that needle, we've gotten very little information, either one of us.
right.
And it's been a struggle. And in fact, I may be taking the lead here, and stop me if you need to.
No, go ahead.
In fact, I asked for some detailed general ledgers, and I started with August of last year, not 2014, 2013.
Right.
I wanted 1 month detailed general ledger. Well, we walk in there, and as we mentioned before, I said, this is not what I asked for.
Mhm.
So I wrote on the paper that you have to sign to acknowledge that you got the documents. I said, this is not what I asked for, and said specifically what I wanted. And then I came home and emailed the PIA officer the same information. I said, I asked for this. This is what I got. I got a summary, not a detail, and I got no chart of accounts.
Right.
So I get a reply email and letter from her saying that you were provided with the documents. But I wasn't, and I knew I wasn't. So I said, okay. She said, you can come in and review them again. I said, well, maybe she's actually accumulated the right documents, and we went in and reviewed them again
Right.
a while later, and they were the same documents. So I wrote the same note, basically. I said, this is not what I requested.
Right.
I come home, send her an email saying the same thing. I get another letter and email saying, we provided you with the documentation, but you can look at it again if you want. I said, well, obviously, I'm not going to get the documents I wanted, and those weren't very crucial documents. There shouldn't have been anything in the general ledger that needed to be redacting. They were basic accounting records. Well, then I get this other letter, because I said, you know, I didn't have a chart of accounts, but I knew some of the accounts that I wanted, because we're focusing on bad debts, and specifically third-party bad debts, which you would think there'd be very little activity at a college on third-party bad debts. That's companies, other colleges that don't pay you. Now, normally, you don't have that kind of problem at a college, I wouldn't expect. So I listed out, and I also wanted the custodial services, which is not going to be a really active account either, but I'm trying to figure out how we save money by spending over $80,000 a month for contract custodial service.
Right.
So I sent a PIA request in for 7 general ledger account detail. Well, my goodness. That opened it up. Here's my estimate. It may have too many numbers for me to read, Doctor. I think it's $26.7 million for that information.
Yes, sir. I've seen that document, and, you know, just under $27 million to provide a taxpayer and potential candidate, or a candidate for the Board of Regents is excessive. Okay? And then that triggered a big brouhaha on the local television stations.
Well, that didn't trigger it. It was your phone call to the reporter that triggered it.
Okay. Whatever. Okay, whatever I can do to help it out. Now, the problem is, this next week, on Tuesday, I think, which would be 30th of September, then you've been summoned by the attorney for the Del Mar College Board of Regents, Mr. Augustin Rivera.
He's the outside counsel for the board.
Okay, and then what the problem is when this was going on with Channel 6, and Mr. Rick Spurl, bless you, Rick, then what we found out was we have the PR person for Del Mar College over there saying, no, it was a mistake. And then she was asked several times, why was this? And well, don't you understand that this was just a mathematical error? And you know, why we don't have the president of Del Mar College answering these questions, it just baffles me.
I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well,
But we'll see what happens Tuesday. But when we got this information from Del Mar, and Rick was called, and he was kind enough to come out and film a few minutes of information from us. He said, listen, this is a big problem, and you need to call the Attorney General. And he gave me the Attorney General contact to call, which I did. And I forwarded an email after having a brief conversation with her. And I said, you know, they want $26.7 million. I think that's a little bit excessive. And I don't have $26.7 million, particularly for information.
right.
And also, I don't have hundreds of years to wait for it, because
Right.
it was going to take 1 million hours to accumulate the information. So I let him know about that. And then I also said, you and I went in there together to get some information, and the PIA officer came in to speak to us, very pleasant. And I said, you know, since she's in here, let me explain to her what I'm asking for, because she probably doesn't have a business background and doesn't understand what I'm asking for, because I've received 2 letters saying I've gotten it already, and I hadn't.
Right.
So I said, this is what I'm asking for, you probably don't understand what it is. She said, no, I completely understand what it is. I have a business degree, I have a business background. I was VP for an oil field services company.
Right.
So I'm sitting there next to you, thinking, well, why did I get 2 letters that said I already had it? If you know what I'm talking about, because obviously you know you didn't give it to me.
Yeah.
That had to be blatantly obvious. So when I wrote the Attorney General, I put a paragraph in there about my my lack of $26.7 million. And I also said, I conveyed to her, the Attorney General, the conversation that we had. I said, if she knew what it was, why did she tell me in 2 letters that I already had it when she had to know I didn't have it?
Yeah.
Well, amazingly, I got this letter from her. It gave me 2 options. I could either pay $354 for the printed documents or 0 for the PDF. And I elected 0.
Yeah. Is that a far cry from 26.7?
Well, this is different
Oh,
data.
okay, right, okay.
This is different data, but the fact is that this is the information she told me in 2 letters that she'd already provided,
Yeah.
but she hadn't. After I wrote the Attorney General, it was available in PDF form, just like I thought it would be.
Oops.
For just the cost of the PDF ought to cost, 0. And it was emailed to me.
Oh, Mr. Bennett.
Now, that's the last communication I've had with her.
Yeah,
Apparently things are going through the future Judge Rivera now.
yeah.
But we're going to meet on Tuesday, and I'm hoping you can attend. I know you've got class.
I will attend the first 30 minutes.
And I've notified Rick, and he's going to check, KRIS is going to be there. And Mr. Rivera said that if we have one news team, we have to allow all of them, so I encouraged him to do that.
Right.
We're going to have to cut this short. I think my battery's about ready to die. So,
Okay.
Doctor?
Well, thank you, Ed. I appreciate your efforts, and I'm all for you. I want you to go over there and make sure that things are going well financially and so forth, and accounting-wise at Delmar, because it's been a long, long dry stretch when anybody's been able to figure it out.
Well, my opinion is nobody's looking, and because I have the knowledge and the resources to go down there, it's my obligation now.
Well, and I appreciate you as a fellow taxpayer that's concerned about taxpayers' money, essentially.
It is. It is their money. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, Ed, you indicated you found some more interesting facts in your discussion, or in your
My research?
research.
I have it, and actually this comes out of Delmar's annual report. The budget's now around $80 million a year, and I'm looking, in my mind, the only reason a college exists, and that would be any college, is to educate the students.
Yes.
And that's the only purpose of a college. And there's no other purpose. So I'm looking at the Delmar annual report, and they spend less than half that budget on what's called instruction expense, which I assume is all the professors,
Right.
full-time, part-time, tenured.
Yeah.
And I noticed in 2011, it was $35.6 million. 2012, it was $34.475 million. In 2013, it's $33.766 million. It's going down. Now the budget's going up.
Right.
The cost of the instructors are going down.
Right.
Yet that's the only reason the college exists.
Right.
So where's the rest of it going?
Well, I've always been preached, Ed, that what we've been going through is called administrative bloat, and over the last 10, 15 years, and we far exceed what we used to pay in salaries to the administration. But every time I turn around, there's another ad for an administrator, and then they come up with the idea of early retirement to get rid of us old coots that make too much money. We don't do anything but sit around and drink coffee and snooze all day. And, it's gotten to be totally out of hand. And I've noticed that, we get budget cuts, we can't do this, that, and the other. And, I do know that our instructional budget in our department's down this year significantly. And I don't understand it. You know, I thought that, as you said, we're there to teach students, folks, to educate the public and the members of the Del Mar College District, the taxpayers and their children and so forth. So I'm just thrilled that you're looking into this and can make more sense out of it than I've been able to do. I'm not an accountant.
And I'll tell you, Doctor, we are the second most illiterate city in America.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a good community college.
Right.
And they need instructors. We've got to have, I've heard referred to as the 13th grade.
Right.
CCISD, they've got a 30% dropout rate. The people that graduate, many of them can't comprehend what they're reading. Their reading skills at the 4th grade level or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to teach them, or else we're going to be providing for their welfare the rest of their lives.
Right.
You can't have a 4th grade reading ability and make enough money to survive unless you're in the oil patch all the time.
Right.
And by the way, the oil patch goes through cycles that go up and down. In 1986, when the oil hit $10 a barrel, there were no jobs.
Right.
And is that going to happen again? Probably, because it always has.
Right. It's a good possibility.
So we need a good community college. We need instructors at that community college. Why are we spending more than half the budget on non-instructional expenses?
I wish I could answer that question. I'm just astounded myself. I thought we'd be spending an awful lot more than that. And then, you know, we have all these cost-saving things like hiring custodial services out, and they're substandard as far as I'm concerned. And
By the way, that's over $80,000 a month for that custodial service.
Right at $82,000 per month.
And, you know, that's $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can hire a lot of qualified, dedicated, local custodians for that amount of money.
Well, we had them for years. I mean, I think now is what, third year, I think, that this custodial service and the groundskeepers have come in. And the service has gone straight to the
And that was a cost savings measure.
It's supposedly.
We need to see the costs that were saved by spending $1 million a year for contract services.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm baffled. Did it cost $2 million for the custodians?
Well, I don't think so. I think the numbers of custodians, to my knowledge, and I'm researching this as we speak, it was actually about a third of what the CFO said that we had, you know, full-timers with benefits and stuff. So I'll get to the bottom of it and we'll give you
And it's not like we can get information readily out of Del Mar College. We've said in the past that Doctor's taught me how to file PIA requests, but he's also taught me how to call the Attorney General when I get crazy numbers, like $26.7 million.
Well, it's called self-defense, and you know, the whole thing's insane, and it's just very difficult to get public information out of Del Mar College, and every day it gets harder and harder to do that, as people, you know, don't want the truth, I guess, out on the streets. I really don't know what the.
And it's a public institution. It's the public's information. We're paying the bill.
That's right.
That $300,000 a day, that comes from us.
That's right.
Every day. Why we've got instruction expense declining while the total budget's going up absolutely baffles me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sat in that boardroom most of the meetings for the last 12 months, and it's an award ceremony normally.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with people getting awards, but somebody better be looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
And somebody better be understanding why it costs a third more to put a student through Del Mar than the national average.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a social club over there, unfortunately, and you know, that's why I'm so incredibly thankful that you decided to you know, bite the bullet and run for the board.
It's going to be a lot of work. And
It's going to cost you money.
it's going to cost me time and money, but somebody better do it. and somebody with the qualifications that I have better do.
Right.
Because the people over there sitting on that board right now, in my opinion, they've not done their homework.
No, they've done taxpayers a great disservice, the majority of them. And then you take a look at the quality of education over there when you get rid of your seasoned professors and custodians or anybody of value like that. And, we're slipping into, as one person put it, mediocrity over there as far as we are academically.
And it all starts at the top, whether it's fiduciary responsibility or academic standards. It starts at the top. If they're mediocre at the top, they're not going to be superb at the bottom.
That's right.
I'm upset. I think we aren't getting what we're paying for. We're certainly not getting a third more than the U.S. average.
Right.
Let's get the standards back up. It used to be a great institution.
Oh, it was when I got here. It was very highly ranked.
And we still have some good PhDs over there, some good masters.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes a terminal degree.
Right.
But we've got some good professors. What we need, in my opinion, is good full-time tenure-track professors that share the governance over there. They've got the academic freedom. That's what attracts good professors.
Right.
The good ones don't have to come here. We need to make it attractive for them, as it was when you were hired.
Mm-hmm.
The city's a nice city. It needs a little work on the streets. It's in a nice location. The college facilities are actually really nice.
Mm-hmm. They could keep them clean.
And stop deferring the maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another big thing, with this $157 million for the two campuses, not only for new buildings, and I think we could do an awful lot better scheduling classes or classrooms that go empty for, 3-4 hours a day. And, I think someone needs to take a close look at that on building utilization rather than go ahead and put up new buildings over there like that at a real exorbitant cost. But, some of the contractors that built those buildings, the windows have leaked for years, and why didn't the former administration and current administration go back to those contractors for
Warranty work.
that's just not done? So, I doubt that I'm going to, I haven't passed judgment on that $157 million bond, but I have great reservations.
Well, Doctor, I've passed judgment on it because it's a fiduciary responsibility issue, and I don't see that they've exercised that obligation with the $80 million and the bad debts that we found, the write-offs.
Right.
I was appalled. So not only would I not give them the $157 million, I think the taxpayers ought to be in there asking them questions about the current $80 million a year,
Yeah. Right.
the $300,000 per day. Doctor?
Well, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Appreciate it again. Okay. Welcome back, folks. I'm interviewing Mr. Ed Bennett. He's running for the Del Mar College Regents, which is citywide here. It's he'd be an at-large member. So the other day, this is a Foghorn. This is a Del Mar College newspaper that comes out about every 2 weeks. And this is the August 26th edition. And it's got several stories here about the proposed Del Mar bond cut in half. We'll talk about the bond later. But it's got a picture of two of the people, one of which is running at large. That's Carol Scott. And then we've got the other person here who's already on the board, Mr. Todd Walter. And he's signing the paperwork as a person running for the board. And what I would like to do is, since I think the Foghorn people and I know Del Mar people keep an eye on this, I'm going to request formally tomorrow, which will be a Monday, of the Foghorn editor to go ahead and run a personal interview with each one of the people who is running for these different Board of Regents slots. So that would be, we've got 6 for the at-large, and then we've got 4 people for the District 4 position. So two of the 6 at-large people will be placed on the board, the top 2 vote getters, and then whoever wins the top number of votes for the District 4. So I'd like to ask the Foghorn to please do this. I do know that the Caller Times has interviewed Ed this past week, I think.
That is
And
correct.
They were interviewing all 9 people who are running for the Board of Regents, just to get a feel and see. I don't know if they're going to endorse anyone with that or not. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that, and I'm going to let Ed speak to some of the financial problems or potential problems we've got at Del Mar College.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, we've been attending those meetings for over a year, and I've been looking at the tax rates, and it bothers me that Del Mar has the second highest tax rate of any community college in Texas. And it's not only the second highest, it's quite a bit higher than most of them. Del Mar's about a quarter, about 25 cents for every $100 valuation.
Right.
El Paso, big city, 11.1 cents, less than half. Amarillo, 16 cents. McLendon, I don't know where that's at.
McLendon, yeah, I think that's up around Dallas.
15 cents. These are comparable, they raise comparable amounts of money. Del Mar raises $39 million through the taxing, El Paso $34 million, others about $15 million. So they're fairly comparable, but the fact is the community college should be reflective of how large the city is.
Right.
Houston's going to raise a lot more. They've got a larger taxing base, they'll have a larger college. Why is Del Mar the second highest tax? Right? That's bothering me. And then I checked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the statistics they have say that Del Mar, it costs Del Mar about a third more to educate a student every year than the national average. Now that doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
And if you extrapolate that out, our $80 million budget is approximately a third too much. That's a big number. That's an awfully big number. And I noticed the student count, and I get this off of Texas Higher Education Board. They've got a website. The student count in 2010 for Del Mar was 12,236. It's declined through 2013, the most recent data they have, to a number of 10,510. It's a steady drop.
Right.
So we're losing students. It's costing more because the budget just increased. We're the second highest taxing community college in Texas, and we're a third higher than the U.S. average in cost.
Right.
These numbers don't make sense.
No.
And then-
it's very confusing.
Let me tell you what really confuses it. The board wants to build a third campus, and they wanted to float a bond issue initially for $287 million, and a major part of that was going to build a third campus.
Right.
Well, based on these figures, and the figures I get from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, not only do we not need a third campus, we probably should be closing down some buildings and better utilizing the ones we have.
Right. Well, and then, you know, what is happening now, in November 4th, there will be asking for a $157 million bond to improve and to build new buildings on both our east and west campuses. And then I think 1.8 million of that they wanted to hold in reserve for plans and architectural plans and so forth for that south side campus, they call it, at Cimarron and Rodfield. And I've heard people that are supporting that go out and make a very erroneous statement that we're busting at the seams with students and we need to have that south side campus.
And I actually heard an interview, or saw an interview on TV with Dr. Mark Escamilla, and the theme of the interview was bursting at the seams. If you were ever bursting at the seams, it would be in 2010. It certainly wouldn't be now. The
Right.
student count's way down. So I don't know how you burst at the seams. I don't know how you cost justify an additional campus. I don't know why it cost a third more, according to the data on the internet, and I have a lot of respect for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It cost a third more to educate our Del Mar students than the national average. These numbers aren't making sense to me.
No.
And we have sat in those board meetings, and I have not heard one penetrating question about the numbers.
No.
And doctor, it's $300,000 every business day.
Right.
$300,000. And by the way, that's our money.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as government money.
Right.
That comes from us, the taxpayers.
Well, we get federal funds, state funds, and then our local taxing district for Del Mar. So taxpayers, you're paying for it, you know, all the way down the line. There's nothing, there are no freebies in there and so forth and so on. And then some of them say, oh, we've got these big grants over there for this, that, and the other. Well, that's taxpayers' money, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know of any private money necessarily that's going in unless maybe the foundation dribbles some scholarships out now and then.
And that may well be, but that's not going to put a dent in that $80 million.
No. And then, again, this year, you know, we were told that we had to cut our budgets back to the bone and we can't afford this, that, and the other. Now, they did provide the faculty with a certain amount of a raise, and then the general employment, non-faculty employees over there. And I think the one with the non-academic employees was 5%, and then faculty members going to be 2.5%, but they reinstated what they call the experience step increases each year, which is, I think, $875 a year is what each faculty member will get added to their base salary for their 9-month base. And they don't, you know, the raise is not going to go with the summer salaries at all. It's just based on what my 9-month base salary is. But I'm getting real curious about all this other money that's being spent. And I'll get into maybe the next segment, the 3% raise that the president got, plus a $15,000 performance bonus. And I think his car allowance is something like $12,000
It is,
a year.
$1,000 a month.
And then he's got phone allowance and travel allowance, so it adds up pretty quick. Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jerry Sansing, and I'm here to interview Mr. Ed Bennett again. Mr. Bennett's going to run for the Del Mar College Board of Regents. There are two positions open. There are 6 candidates so far. And I just wanted to let you know that he is a CPA, master's in accounting and so forth, and knows what he's talking about. And I've, for a number of years, as you all know out there, had my own show, South Texas News and Reviews, on the Public Access 10 channel here, Public Access on the cable. And Ed is now airing these until the election on November 4th. So I'd like to have him tell you a little bit about the cost that Del Mar College has for teaching students, or I guess per hour or whatever.
Thank you, Doctor. It's what I've got. I've been trying to do some research on the budget and how much it actually costs to educate a student over there at Del Mar. As you know, we've been attending most of the Del Mar board meetings for a year, and they have, it looks like an award presentation when we go to a board meeting, and then there's some financial information that's dispensed by Dr. Lee Sloan. I think he's got an EED.
Yes, and agricultural education.
And I can't find that he's ever had an accounting course, and he's their chief financial officer. So he's dispensing the financial information, and I have never heard a penetrating question asked by any board member. So I'm thinking, is $300,000 a day for every business day of the week for the entire year, is that such a small amount that nobody needs to ask a question of the CFO? And so I've done some research. And I've tried to get information from the college. I've not been, well, to say I've not been successful would be a misnomer. The last letter I got which there had been a correction sent to after we made a phone call to the Attorney General. But the last letter I got from them for some general ledger printouts, which would not have any redactable information in it, they wanted $127 million for that information. They wanted to provide me with 105 million pages of information, but they wanted to take 500 man years to redact it. Well, I don't have the 127 million. I don't have the 500 man years to wait.
26.7.
I'm sorry.
It was 105 million documents.
You're right.
Yeah, it was just,
The numbers are astounding.
yeah, just a paltry $26,700,000.
So I'm not getting any information from them. So I've been doing research through publicly available information, either information that they dispense or that I find on the internet. And quite honestly, Bill and Melinda Gates have a foundation that publishes a lot of very wonderful statistics. For instance, for every full-time equivalent student, the average community college spends $9,501. That's annually. Well, Del Mar has been spending, according to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which I suspect they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Del Mar spends $12,368 for the same basic education that the U.S. average is $9,501. Now, that's a pretty substantial difference.
Yes.
In round numbers, that's a third.
Mm-hmm.
So we're spending a third more. Now, does that mean that we are inefficient to the tune of 1/3 of that budget? Which, if you divide 80 million by 3, that's a big number.
Yeah.
So any way you calculate it, it's a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it costing us at Del Mar so much more than the average U.S. college to educate a student?
I don't know. That's the first I'd heard about it. I don't know where to find those numbers. That's why I'm just so pleased that Mr. Bennett's going to run for the regent spot there, so he can get into that and start asking the pertinent questions. And I think what triggered a lot of this, Ed, was we went to a workshop once, and the CFO over there, Dr. Sloan, said that on some bad debts, they were doing everything in the world they could to collect that money. And then that's what triggered an awful lot of this information. So I went through and asked for all the records for 10 years on bad debts and so forth, and write-offs, and got a 5-foot stack of paper that Ed and I went through.
Unredacted.
Unredacted. And we were just astounded that Del Mar College is really just a cash cow for people that want to come in and they borrow money on different loan programs and so forth, and then walk off and don't pay them. And I also had asked for the green cards, which is the return receipt from the post office that you normally do if you want to get someone's attention, and any lawsuits or anything that were filed, and we found absolutely nothing. And I'll let Ed tell you about the $185,000 third-party write-offs.
In that 5-foot stack of documents, we did locate 3 very relevant documents. They were the journal entry, which was 2 pages, and the support or the memo authorizing the write-off of third-party bad debt to the tune of in excess of $185,000, including Texas A&M Kingsville, about $54,000, Council of Government, $89,000. The memo was initiated by Dr. Sloan and signed off by Dr. Escamilla. So they know that they wrote off third-party bad debt. It's documented. Now, I sent a PIA, based on your recommendation, to Texas A&M Kingsville. They know nothing about it. That concerned me. And then I wondered, we asked for all the lawsuits, but I wanted to clarify it to make sure that we'd gotten all lawsuits. So I sent another PIA in. I said, I need all lawsuits filed from January 1, 2003 till today to collect accounts receivable. It came back with 0. So they're not filing lawsuits. If somebody owed me $54,000 and they didn't pay, I would file a lawsuit.
Sure. And that's,
as would any reasonable person.
yeah. Well, that's taxpayers' money, folks, that's down the drain. Now, there is another possible explanation for that, but I'm not gonna get into that at the moment. Now, we had received that 5-foot stack of papers. I'd asked for 10 years worth of information. And then that took us through August of 2013. So then I wanted to update that, and back in May, it's been that long. So I said I'd like to have updates of that, and that's when I was told that no, we're going to have to redact this and so forth, and I can't top $26.7 million that you did, but they want $641 from me to have what should have been redacted in the first group, I guess. I'm not sure. But they say that they're going to have to photocopy a bunch of stuff and redact students' names and credit card numbers and everything else under the sun. And that I'm going to have to pay for their ability or requirement to do that. Now, I've got a little bit of different verbiage and information from the Attorney General's office. I'm not so sure they backed that up. And I've been told that the letters that they got from the Attorney General's office were going to be mailed to me a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't seen anything, which is not surprising to me.
But if they had to redact this time, then they would have had to redact that 5-foot stack.
Right.
So one way or the other, they violated some law.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, why can't we just admit that we've screwed up and get it over with? But that's just not what Delmar does. And then they turn around and expect me to trust them with this, that, and the other. And I'm going to be totally honest on the air with you and everybody else. I don't trust them for anything. I really don't. My trust is gone. It's out the window. So.
And it's, at this point, it's all about fiduciary responsibility in my mind.
Right.
Nobody's asking any questions. It's $300,000 a day. I'm looking at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation calculations, and Delmar is way out of line. Not only with the cost per student, but the debt per student. Mm-hmm. Right now, they've got about $100 million in bonds outstanding. If there's 10,000 students, that's $10,000 a piece. We don't know how many students there are because there's a lot of dual credit students who don't even set foot on that campus. So there's no debt required for a student that doesn't set foot on that campus. But they've got basically $10,000 per student debt right now. They originally wanted to float a bond for $287 million at 10,000 students. That's an additional $28,700. So that would put it up to over $38,000 debt per student, which is astronomically out of line from any other community college in Texas. Some community colleges have $682 per student debt. Doctor, let's continue this at another time. I think we've got more to talk about.
Okay.
I appreciate your coming by today.
Okay, thank you.